Welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. My name is Braden Knutson and I'll be your host for this webinar today. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us. As we get going through our announcements and our introduction here, we'd love to invite you to participate in the polls we have on the screen. Where you're listening from, it's always fun for everybody to see where everyone logs in at and who's in this class together. It's always kind of neat to see. Also, we'd love to know how you heard about today's webinar and how we can continue to reach out to others to have them participate in these learning experiences as well. So as we go through our announcements here, our next webinar will be next Friday on May 4th at 3 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and that will be with Kathryn Grant. And just keep an eye out for our schedule, and that the title will be released before Friday. So it'll be either this afternoon or on Monday. We should have our schedule posted for everybody to come and to see that as well. Also, if you have been experiencing some YouTube problems and having YouTube blocked while you are at your local church building or your family history center, we have a new viewing platform on our site. If you go to our website, and you can go through there and find the page that has different videos, so you can watch those videos at the church without them being blocked. And that was probably super confusing and I didn't explain it very well, but it's a big advertiser right on the main page of our website. If you click on the link, it'll take you to those videos. And if you ever have any questions, comments, or if you ever have any problems with any of our website or the recordings on YouTube, feel free to email us. Our email is at the bottom here under the announcements at fhl_webinars@byu.edu. We always love to receive feedback and suggestions whenever we can. So today we'll be pleased to hear from Kathryn Grant, who will be giving a presentation titled Using the Consultant Planner with Discover, Gather, Connect. That's actually not what she's talking about today. I forgot to change it today. Let me look this up. I'm just on top of it today. The title for today is English Research, Finding Ancestors Using FreeReg Parish Registers. Sorry about that confusion. So after years on the sidelines, Kathryn started doing family history and discovered a new passion. Her specialty is mentoring new family historians and helping them find success, and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Family History Library. She also presents at Riverton Saturday seminars and other family history events. Her column on family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. Kathryn works for the LDS Church as a technical writer with a focus on usability and process improvement. Besides family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and homemade guacamole. So we like to just say that all of these mistakes and errors that we make just help you know that we're human as well, so you don't have to feel so bad about how difficult things get sometimes. But as Kathryn gets her stuff set up here, we'd like to remind you about our comments and questions box on the right-hand side of the screen. Feel free to write in with any questions, and we'll make sure we get those answered by the end. And Kathryn, whenever you're ready, feel free to take it away.
That sounds great. And I have to say, that's the first mistake that I've ever heard Braden make, as opposed to my mistakes, which there are numbers of them in every webinar that I give. So, Braden, you're doing great. So, everybody, welcome today to our webinar. It's so good to be with you, and thank you for taking time to join us. Today we'll be talking about one of my favorite sites for English research, but it doesn't seem to be very well known. And so I hope that this will help you get familiar with a resource that may be valuable to you. So let's go ahead and look at what we're going to be talking about today. If I can get the screen to advance. See, there's mistake number one. We're just, like Braden said, it's all good. We're just human and we just roll with it. So we're trying to get the screen to advance. There we go. So our overview of what we're going to be talking about today is this. First of all, we'll do a brief introduction to FreeReg, kind of explain what it is. Then we'll do a simple search with a couple of examples. And after that, we'll look at some, I wouldn't call them advanced search options, but just things that give you a little bit of extra flexibility or power to your search. And then we'll talk about how you can use a FreeReg record as a source in Family Tree. Then we'll talk about how you can tell if the record that you're looking for is on FreeReg. In other words, if you're searching in a certain place, has that place been transcribed on FreeReg. And then finally, we'll talk about ways that you can give back to this endeavor. So welcome to FreeReg. What is FreeReg? Well, it's a site that offers transcriptions of parish registers. And for those of you who may not be familiar with parish registers, they are church records of births, marriages, and deaths. So BMD, births, marriages, and deaths. They are all transcribed by volunteers. So this is very similar to the indexing program of the LDS Church. There are no images on this site, so that's something to be aware of. You only get a text image of what was on the original, or a text transcription of what was on the original image. And then finally, the great thing about it, as you can guess from the title, FreeReg, is that there is no charge. And you actually don't even have to register or sign up or anything. The goal of the people who do these FreeReg sites and the sister sites of FreeReg, like there's FreeSyn for free censuses, and there's maybe one or two, I think FreeBMD is one of them. Their goal is to make family history freely available to everybody. And so it's wonderful. They don't charge, and they're never planning to charge. So this is a great site if you want to go to a place where you don't have to pay and don't have to register, you can just use it. So for some of us who may not be familiar with parish registers, I did want to show an image of one. So this is a parish register from the county of Middlesex in England. And you can see that the handwriting is maybe not necessarily that easy to read. So we can be really grateful for these many volunteers that have transcribed all these records on FreeReg. And when I say many volunteers and many records, there are about 41 million records on FreeReg, which is quite an accomplishment. So this figure comes from their website, and it's constantly growing. So they're constantly adding records to FreeReg. So as you can see, this is a pretty substantial collection of free parish registers that you can look at, or at least the transcriptions of them. So why would we want to use FreeReg? You may be asking yourself that question, especially if you're aware that there are plenty of parish registers on FamilySearch.org in historical records. There's parish registers on Ancestry.com, on Find My Past, and on other sites. Well, I'll give you a few of the reasons that I like using FreeReg. And these other sites are wonderful as well. So like as genealogists, wherever we can get the information, we're glad to get it, right? So one thing I like about FreeReg is that I've noticed that their transcriptions are very high quality. I think they must have a really good quality assurance or double checking, arbitration, whatever you want to call it, a very good system for correcting their records before they release them to the public. Because honestly, I've only ever found one mistake and they have a way that you can report mistakes in transcription. We'll see that button later on. But I've only ever found one on this site, and I actually can't say the same for other sites that I've looked at. So in my experience, the quality of their transcriptions their quality is very high, and they're free. So you can't beat free, right? No charge for it. One thing I found is that FreeReg sometimes has records that I can't get anyplace else. And it's really just the luck of the draw. They assign their volunteers to transcribe certain things, then they put them online, and it just depends on what records they choose to transcribe or what they have available. So if I can't find something on other sites, sometimes I can find it here. So this is definitely worth checking if you're looking for English Parish Register information. And then finally, one thing I love about this site is that the indexes or the transcriptions contain more information than I usually find on other sites. For instance, they will list the witnesses if they're available. They'll list the abode of the family, and they'll list the church where I was going to say ordinance, but I don't think that's quite the right word, but where the ceremony or the church rite was performed. On other sites, you usually have to look at the image to get that information, but on FreeReg, they've transcribed it in many instances, so you can just see it right there on the screen. So how do you access? You can go to freereg.org.uk. This is an English site, or you can just Google FreeReg, and whenever I've done that, it comes up as the top result. Okay, let's dive into our example of doing a couple of simple searches. So one thing I love about FreeReg is that they're very user-friendly, and they assume that people come to their site because they want to search. So when you go to that URL, the first thing that comes up is the search form. So you don't have to go hunting for it. It's right there when you go to their site. So let's look at an example of, I'm going to search for one of my family guys, John Besceby, John Stokes Besceby actually. So let's walk through filling out the form. So first of all, I'm going to input the surname, and this sometimes trips people up, including myself, because on other sites, oftentimes the first name comes first and the surname comes last. But on this site, you want to be careful to put the surname in first. So I'm going to put in Besceby, and then I'm going to put in the first and middle names under forenames. And for those of us in the US, forenames is not necessarily a term that we use that often, but you will find it on English sites, and it just means the first names, so first and middle names, but just not the last name. So surname is last name, forename is anything that comes before that. So after I fill in the names, I want to put in a year range, and this makes it so easy because you can just specify the first year and the last year. And then you come down here and specify the county, and so my Bescabys were from Lincolnshire, and so I've selected Lincolnshire as the county. And I happen to know from the census that John was born in Spalding, and so I'm going to specify that as the place that I want to search. And then in this instance, I am just looking for a christening record or an infant baptism. So I'm just going to click the baptism option, and then I'm going to click search. So when I do that, I get a result page that looks like this. At the top of the page, it gives me a summary of what I've searched for. So that's really helpful because I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I don't remember from one screen to the next what I searched for, especially if I've been searching, for dozens of things over a period of a couple of hours. It all starts to blend together. So very helpfully, they list the search terms at the top so I can see exactly what I searched for. And that's also helpful if I make a mistake. Maybe I make a typo in the date and I don't get any results, or I get results I'm completely not expecting, but then I can look at what I searched for and say, oh, dang it, I put in 1906 instead of 1806, and then I can easily fix that. So that review is very helpful, and then right below it, they list the results that you get, and in this case, I just got one. So when I want to look at the detail, you notice it gives a little summary of the rite that was performed, in this case a christening, but I want to see more detail. So I go ahead and click that link in the detail column, and it opens up into another screen that gives me detail. And it's kind of what you would expect. It gives you the location information, birth date if available, baptism date, parents' names, and so forth. And here's that button that I mentioned earlier. If you were to find an error in the transcription, for instance, maybe you'd seen it on another site, or you knew from the family that the name was misspelled, something like that, you can go ahead and click that button to report an error in transcription. So this just gives you a nice summary of the information. Again, there's no image, but notice that it gives you additional information that you often don't find on indexes. So I've got here the birth date, which often isn't given on other sites, even if it's listed on the image. And then also one thing that I think is really helpful is that if there's a family history library film number, they'll include that here. And so, for instance, you might go to Family Search Historical Records and look up this film and see that the images are either not available or only available in a family history library, but at least you've got the film number. So if you need to, you can either go to Salt Lake to look at the image or go to a family history library or something like that. So it just gives this information that is really helpful to you in doing further research. So let's go back to the results screen, and I wanted to mention these buttons at the top. So once I've looked at the search, and oh, you know what? I forgot to say one thing. Let me go back up here. To get back to the results screen, I want to click this Back to Results button. So I'm going to do that, and it will take us back to this results screen. And I want to talk about these 4 buttons at the top of the screen. So we've got Revise Search, which is useful if you want to change a search without you losing your search terms. So if you click Revise Search, it's going to take you back to the original screen, but everything that you originally entered, the name, the dates, and so forth, is going to still be there. So for instance, suppose that I didn't find what I was looking for, and I thought, well, I'm going to try to search to 1810 instead of 1808. So then I just hit Revise Search and I go back to the form and I just edit that one date and run the search again. And that's a lot easier than trying to put in all the information all over again. But if I did want to start a completely new search, then of course I can just hit New Search, and that erases all my search terms and lets me start with a clean search form. I'm going to skip about this query for just a minute because I want to go into more detail about that. But let's look at, or talk about printable format. What that does is just take you to a page that lists these results in plain text format. So as you might have discovered by trying to print from a browser, when browsers have graphics on them, sometimes you get some really weird printed results. So if you are getting weird, if you try to print this and you get weird results, then you can go to printable format and it will just be plain text, and then it will, I've never had a problem printing that. It always seems to print just fine. So about this query, what that does is explain the logic behind the search query. So it explains basically how it works. So if I click that button for this query, this is what I get. So you notice it splits it up into the different search terms. So up here for name, it tells me what I had entered exactly. And again, that's really helpful. And it tells me a little bit more, such as it doesn't matter whether I capitalize or not. This search engine ignores capitalization, so I can do it all lowercase, all uppercase, or initial caps, and that will not hurt my search results. I'll still get good search results. And then also it tells me that records that are marked partially illegible may be included if they match the search terms closely enough. We go down here to date, and it tells us exactly what dates are covered, that it does start on January 1 of 1806, it goes to December 31, etc., etc. So that screen is really helpful if you get unexpected results or if you're just curious to know what the logic is behind their search engine. Okay, let's go through another pretty simple search. In this one, I've decided I still want to search for John Bescovy, but this time I want to search for more than just his christening. So you see here I've expanded the birth year to 1885, stayed in Lincolnshire because I'm pretty sure from the census that that's where he lived his whole life, but there's evidence that he didn't just stay in Spalding. So instead of specifying Spalding as the parish that I'm going to search, I'm going to go ahead and leave this blank, and so it's going to search the whole county for me. And then I'm going to say that I want all 3 types this time, so I want baptisms, marriages, and burials, instead of just limiting it to baptisms. And then finally, of course, I click search again. And this time I get a screen with 5 results. And you'll see that it was a good thing. Whoops, hit that advance too quickly. Sorry there. So you'll see it was a good thing actually that I didn't limit my search to Spalding, because John ended up marrying twice. His first wife died, and with his family he lived in Sutterton. And then finally, when he passed away, he lived in Swineshead. And I should comment that I actually had, I've done research on this, so I do know that these all are my John Stokes Bescovy. If I didn't know that when these results came up, I definitely want to prove it. But even looking at these dates, these are very logical for one person. We don't see anything that looks contradictory or odd, or like one of these might be a grandson or something like that. The dates kind of line up well for one person. So again, to see detail, I would just click the link in the detail column. This time, let's take a look at the marriage. So it again shows you pretty much what you would expect, the name of the bride and the groom. Again, I mentioned that it will often show witnesses, which can be wonderful for finding other family members. And as it turns out, this Rosamond Pierce is related. As I recall, she's John's sister, if I remember right, and she married a Joseph Pierce, and these two are husband and wife. So, but before I got that information as witnesses, I didn't know that. And so this gave me a clue actually that helped me find out more about the family. One thing I did want to mention are, whoops, I did it again. One thing I wanted to mention are these buttons at the top of the screen. You notice that on this entry, they're a little bit different than they were when I only had one search result. You've still got the revised search and the new search, but you've got you've got previous result and next result. So you can page through these results if you've got multiple results without going back to that main screen that showed the list of all the results. One thing also I did want to comment on, here we've got two buttons that look like they would allow you to export all the search results. So as some of you might be aware, CSV stands for comma separated values. It's a format that Excel can read. And so if you were to export this to a CSV, you could read it, could open it in an Excel spreadsheet. But I was actually expecting it to export all 5 of those results, and it doesn't. It only, when you push this export button, it only includes this entry that's showing up on the screen. So if you wanted all of them to go into Excel, you'd actually have to do that export on every entry that came up in the search results, which maybe seems a little bit tedious. So just did want to comment on that it's not going to give you the whole thing. It's only going to give you the one record that you're looking at. Okay, search options. If you scroll down under the search form, you come to this search option box below. And actually, you'll notice before I kind of had the search button showing up right under this. It doesn't really show up that way on the screen. I just did that so it would fit on the slide. But usually when you're doing a search, you will have to scroll down to see that search button. So let's look at each of the items in the search option box. So first of all, you can choose to search for family members. That is really helpful if you're looking for somebody, for instance, you wanted to look for all the records that had John Bescovy as a parent. If you didn't search, or excuse me, if you didn't check this box, then it would only find John Bescovy as the principal or as the main person of the record. But if I click this, then it's not only going to show John Bescovy as the person getting christened, but also every record where a John Bescovy shows up as a father. If you want witnesses to be searched, then you click the witness checkbox. If you want a fuzzy search or a SoundX search, then you click Name SoundX. And for those of you who might not be familiar with SoundX, that just allows you to get similar sounding names in the search results. So for instance, it would pick up Bescovy, Bascovy, which sometimes it's spelled that way, B-A-S instead of B-E-S, and also B-I-S and so forth. It would pull in the B-E-S-K instead of just B-E-S-C and so forth. So if you're not getting the results that you expect, this is another good thing to check because it will pull in similar sounding results. And then finally, nearby places can be really helpful. What it will do is search places within 40, oh dear, I want to say 40 miles of the place. I don't remember actually if it's miles or kilometers, but it's within a specified distance from this place. You know what? Now that I say that, I don't think that's right. because now I remember it looking at it and seeing that it said, like it pulled in 40 something, and then it said that this was like 10.6 miles. So I apologize. I don't remember what that is. I'm going to look that up and I will post it in the comments under the YouTube video when that's posted. And so watch for that correction on the YouTube video. So how do you attach a FreeReg source, how do you attach a FreeReg record as a source in Family Tree? Well, you would think that you could just link to it, but I found that the links don't persist. In other words, you might do a search and the link will bring up those search results for maybe a few hours, but later on, especially a couple days later on, that search link will no longer work and you'll get a message like this, that you've requested a page that does not exist. And I actually did email FreeReg to ask them about that, and they confirmed it. They said that those links are not long-term links. They're just for the purposes of that search, and eventually they expire. So given that you cannot use that link in a family search source, what do you do? Well, I found that the best thing, at least what works best for me, is to take a screenshot, then to add that screenshot as a memory in Family Tree, and then create a source and link it to that memory. So because this is not a webinar on attaching sources, I didn't go into more detail than this on my slide deck. But if you'd like more detail on that, if that's something that you're not familiar with, please feel free to email me and I can send you more detailed instructions. And my email will appear at the end of the presentation. So how do I tell if the record I want has been transcribed, or rather if the area in which I'm looking has been transcribed? There's a really easy way to do that. So when you're looking at the FreeReg screen, you want to go ahead and click on Transcriptions. And that takes you to a place where you can do a search based on location. So for this example, I want to know if the parish of Chatras in Cambridgeshire has been transcribed on FreeReg. So I pick Cambridgeshire from this menu and then I click Go. And then I get another set of menus where I can either pick a specific place or I can pick a letter group. In this case, I'm lazy. I don't want to scroll down to Chatras. And since it starts with a C, I'm just going to click A to C. So I click that and click Go, and I get this list. And it gives me everything from A to C, and I scroll down, and there, lo and behold, is Chatras. Now I can click Chatras and I can get information on the transcriptions that have been done. So I can see that they have last worked on this in 2015, that there are a total of 319,000 parish register entries that have been transcribed. And when the date is 0, I'm not sure what that means. I don't think that means like Adam, or the year of Adam and Eve or something. But I would have to probably email them and ask them what that means. We do have the last year of actual entries, so I know here that this only goes to 1876, and that's also helpful because then I know if I'm looking for someone, say in 1892, well, they're not going to show up in FreeReg because they have not transcribed any entries past that point. And here we see a breakdown of the number of transcriptions that have been done, and I'm coming back here to see how I got to that, and I believe that I just scrolled down the page to get to that. So that will give you information if you want to see what was done broken down by year. So if you find this site helpful and you decide that you'd like to give back or participate, there's 2 ways that you can do that. One is that you can become a volunteer. You can actually do transcriptions for the site. And so up here in the top menu bar, you can just click volunteer and then you will get more information on that. And then also you can donate. So this site is run completely by volunteers. It's not, they don't earn any money off the transcriptions that they provide. So at the bottom of many pages on the site, you will see a donation box, and I love it with a little heart on it. So you can donate through PayPal, and I believe they accept other means of payment, but that might be a nice way to give back to them and let them know that you appreciate um, what the service that they're providing. And just by way of full disclosure, I have no connection whatsoever to FreeReg. I don't, volunteer for them or anything. I just think they're a really great site. So they didn't ask me to solicit donations. I just wanted to make you aware that if you're interested, they do have a means to provide donations or for us to give donations. So that brings us to the end of our webinar today. Just as a summary of what we talked about, we did a quick introduction to FreeReg. We reviewed some simple searches and we looked at their a little bit more advanced search options. We talked about how you can attach a FreeReg record as a source in Family Tree, how to determine the coverage or what locations are included, and then finally how to give back. So thank you very much for coming to our webinar today. And Braden, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to write those into the questions box now. But our first question is, how many areas in England are included? Are there areas that are not represented?
That is a really great question, and I don't know the answer to that. The way that I would find it is I'd go to that page that we just looked at where you can determine the coverage. So I would look for whatever area I was interested in and see if it appeared there. And if it didn't appear there, then it hasn't been transcribed. Thank you for asking that.
Okay, well, right now I think that is all of the questions that we have received so far. If there are any other questions, please write those in and we'll make sure we get those answered. Do you have anything else, Kathryn, to finish up?
I don't, but thank you everybody for being here today.
All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you next week for our next webinar as we go continue in this series. Be sure to follow us on our social media sites and on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get notified when we upload all of the videos, so you can come back and review the material that has gone over. And if you ever have any suggestions, please feel free to send us an email. And if you have any feedback for today's webinar, we'd love to hear from you. There's a little feedback pod at the bottom of the screen, and we always appreciate getting suggestions and hearing how we can make things better or telling us what we're doing good. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you again next time.